So, disaster. First of all, look, I would be embarrassed if someone wanted to test my DNA to see if I match a pile of poop or several piles of poop throughout the office, okay? But I should note they did a cheek swab to see if the DNA matched. They did not ask them to defecate to do the test that way. Now, nonetheless, there's a really interesting law in the U.S. that I was completely unaware of. And basically, there's like a wrongful genetic testing law indicating that employers can't test someone's DNA to see whether or not they have any genetic predisposed to any type of disease. So as you guys know, you might have a cancer gene or you might have some other type of gene that indicates that you're going to be sick later on, or you could be sick later on, and that could in turn affect hiring practices.
So I love that law. I think that what it's trying to weed out is genetic.
China has begun using anal swabs to test those it considers to be at high risk of contracting COVID-19. Last week, officials took anal swabs from residents of neighborhoods confirmed COVID-19 cases in Beijing. Small localized outbreaks in recent weeks have isolated several cities from the rest of the country in northern China and sparked massive testing campaigns, most of which have been done with nose and throat swabs. The anal swabs method can increase the detection rate of infected people, as traces of the virus linger longer in the anus than in the respiratory tract.
We also conduct anal swab for patients after patients swallow the nucleic acid. There might be traces of coronavirus detected in the abdominal cavity spaces and intestines.
Anal swabs require inserting a cotton swab 3 to 5 centimeters or 1.2 to 2 inches into the anus and gently rotating it.
DNA stool testing is non-invasive. All patients have to do is send a stool sample to the lab. Here's how it works. Colon polyps and cancers shed DNA that ends up in your stool. In the lab, technicians extract DNA from the stool. From that DNA, they identify mutated genes from normal genes. An increased amount of mutated DNA indicates the presence of cancer or precancer.
That tells me that there's a % of DNA on my PCR plate here which has mutations, and we know that the patient has a possible cancer there because of the number of mutations we find in his stool.
Li Xiongzheng, Associate Director of Respiratory and Infectious Disease at Beijing's Yuan Hospital, said that applying extra anal swabs can improve the detection rate of infection and reduce misdiagnosis. He added that because anal swab is inconvenient compared to other swab tests, it is only being used for people under quarantine in major centers, including Daxing District in Beijing. The said practice gets the attention of some Chinese and triggered talks in Chinese social media. A student who returned from South Korea, who had an anal swab in Beijing, wrote that it is an endless shame, while a student based in Australia mentioned in her blog that she was administered with anal swab and encouraging others to cooperate with medical staff. Also, a woman from northern city of Tangshan said that the practice is a bit embarrassing but for their own good. Meanwhile, some Chinese health experts are expressing their doubts towards the practice. Dr. Yang Zhenkayu from Wuhan University said in an interview that there have been cases concerning the COVID-19 testing positive in a patient's excrement, but no evidence has suggested it had been transmitted through one's digestive system.
In this video, you will learn how the PureLink Microbiome DNA Purification Kit allows you to isolate DNA that accurately reflects the diverse microbes in the community sampled. In this case, stool. Stool is the most challenging sample type. However, the kit has protocols for a wide range of biological samples, including urine, saliva, swabs, transport media, microbial culture, and soil. This video will provide an outline of stool microbial DNA isolation, plus some tips and tricks. The online manual describes the protocol in detail. Since some microbes have very thick cell walls, efficient lysis of all microbes present is an important first step. A combination of heat, chemical, and mechanical disruption with specialized beads will get the job done.
各位大夫大家好，我给大伙演示一下刚尺子采集。在新冠肺炎病例刚尺子采集的时候，请大家着2级防护。我这是为了演示，所以穿了个1级。然后采刚尺子的时候，拿咱们这个病毒采样管， 然后先主病人找一个合适的位置做一个支撑，然后把双腿岔开，然后告诉他一些注意事项，告诉他放松，然后咱们开始采集。采集的时候让他放松，然后用咱们这个就采烟式的这个烟式的棉签儿，然后让他捅进肛门，捅进去之后两三厘米，然后转3圈，然后拿出来看有没有颜色改变，有的话插到咱们这管里。插到管里以后贴码送检就行了，然后送检的标准规范，生完全要求同烟是子。
结束了。
我们非常关心的是什么呢？这些病人出院了，他又复阳了，他有没有再传给其他人呢？针对这件事情，上海市很早就做了一个预备的方案。我们的预备方案就是2次核酸阴性以后，我们还会给病人同时做干试纸，就是说你有核酸会吞咽下去，腹腔里面、大便里面可能也会有，肠道里面可能也有这个病毒，所以我们全部要阴性，这是第一点。第二点，全部阴性的以外，出去了，我们2个星期还要再给他采样、再随访。但是今天我在这里，我负责任的告诉大家，到目前为止，上海的病人居然没有出现再反阳的，但是这个不代表我们后面的病人也没有反阳的。但是我现在关心的是反阳了你怎么办？所以我只关心反阳的病人会不会再传播。全国按照现在为止，没有看到这个数据。
患者出院以后7到14天会来我们这边第一次随访，对我们对患者的这个血液、CT、小便都会进行一系列的检查。广州、武汉爆出来说有非常多的这种出院病人有复阳的情况，马上这个医务部就通知我们，隔天就马上开始对所有的患者都要进行咽拭子的这样的一个随访，包括有一些患者有必要，我们还会进行大便的这样的一个检查。
When dogs poop, they don't poop pure DNA. So when a sample comes into Mr. Dog Poop's lab, the first thing we have to do is separate the DNA from the actual poop. The process begins when the dog poop tech puts the sample into the dog poop centrifuge. The sample will be spun at about 4,000 times normal gravity for around 4 minutes. This will separate out the solids and the solution that we use to preserve the DNA during the transport process.